Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, September the 13th, 2020. It is currently 8:22 a.m. Central Time. I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church. I'm sitting here in the sanctuary. I arrived early this morning for the Sunday school hour and the morning worship hour, which we will be live streaming because we had someone in our church test positive for COVID-19. So that stopped the in-person meeting. We're back to live streaming, and whenever that happens, I always come out here early, and I usually set everything up with the idea that I'll do a couple of hours of live streaming, including the church services and the Sunday school hour. However, my morning has taken a very different turn. I had a plan. I had some things I wanted to turn on the microphone and talk to you about. But everything changed. Let me explain what happened. I arrived at church. I had to carry everything in. I have bags, I have books, I have, a computer, the iPad. I had to carry everything in, set everything up, got everything set up, and I walked over to the pulpit and was standing in the pulpit, and I had my iPad. I opened the iPad and immediately was confronted with a very disturbing news. One that bothered me greatly. Now, we can look at this news article and ask ourselves, what does this mean as far as culture is concerned? What does this tell us about where we are as a society, where we are as human beings here in the United States of America in 2020? We could talk about, does this indicate where we may be headed as 2020 continues and the election and the fallout from the election? Does this tell us that we're in for a very difficult time? We could look at it from that perspective. I also thought about, and in fact, as I was reading the news article, I stopped and I grabbed a notebook and I opened my Bible and I looked up 3 passages of Scripture and wrote down the references. We could look at it from a very biblical perspective and try to take this disturbing news article and use it as a mirror to look into our own hearts and into our own lives, into our own churches and our own families. So there's a lot of different ways we could look at this, but I'm just going to tell you what happened. It's disturbing. It's tragic. It's just sad because you feel like that to try to talk about it, that you have to try to, you got to make sure you say, well, this was also wrong and this was also wrong. And that I have to try to, throw in all kinds of little additional information, because if I don't, someone will try to argue with me. I don't think there's anything to argue. I think we can all universally, we should stand up and condemn what occurred, especially as Christians. All right. Let's look at this. Again, this is what I was confronted with this morning. As I was standing in the pulpit, I opened my iPad, and this is what I read. 2 LA deputies ambushed. All right, there's a photograph above that headline. 2 LA deputies ambushed. You can see a police car, and then you see an individual walking towards the police car with a gun in their hands, and obviously they opened fire on those 2 Los Angeles deputies. They were shot. That's bad enough. So this police car was sitting there, and all of a sudden an individual walked by, then turned, raised a gun, started unloading the gun, firing the gun into the police car, and both deputies were struck. That's bad enough. But it sounds like, from the reporting that we have seen so far, is once the ambulance arrived and then took these 2 deputies and tried to get them to the hospital, protesters blocked the hospital, blocked entrance into the hospital, and from some reports, were chanting, "We hope they die. We hope they die." Now, if all of this proves to be true, what can you say? What does it say about human beings? What does it say about society? Now, obviously, from my theological perspective, I believe all human beings are totally depraved, and I believe in the depravity of man. Definitely. But I think this also says a lot about our world today, how it views life. It's just weird. Like some lives are valuable, but then, oh, wait, these lives are not valuable. This says a lot about revenge, vengeance. This says so much about our world today. But let me, again, give you the basic. I'm gonna read some news articles about this, but let me just give you a basic description. There was a police car sitting there, 2 deputies inside. An individual starts walking by the car, turns towards the car, lifts up a gun, starts firing the gun inside the police car. Both deputies were struck with bullets. Then ambulance arrived, loaded up the 2 deputies, tried to take them to a hospital. Protesters, according to reports, were blocking the hospital, and according to some reports, were chanting, "We hope they die." Now, if all of that proves to be true, what can be said other than just it's almost like it's beyond anger. It's sadness. It's frustration. It's this. It's almost like this feeling in my stomach. Like this. How bad are things going to get? Our world is so divided right now. But let's just read a little bit of what we are having reported to us. This comes to us from ABC7. ABC7, I believe this is a Los Angeles ABC affiliate, and this is what they are reporting. 2 Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies shot in Compton ambush. 2 Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department deputies were shot at a metro station in Compton Saturday evening, officials say. Now, here's the story. That's where all the headlines. 2 Los Angeles County Sheriff Department deputies are fighting for their lives after they were shot in the head in an ambush at the metro station in Compton, officials say. Please note they were shot in the head. The incident happened Saturday at the Metro Blue Line station at Willowbrook Avenue and Compton Boulevard around 7 p.m. The location is a short distance from the Compton Sheriff's Station. Surveillance video of the shooting shows the suspect ambushed the deputies as they sat in their patrol vehicle. A man clad in dark clothing walks up to the parked vehicle at the metro station, approaches the window on the passenger side, and fires several times at close range. The suspect then runs off on foot. One deputy is seen emerging from the passenger side and stumbling around on foot for several seconds before the video ends. Both deputies sustained multiple gunshot wounds and underwent surgery at a local hospital. They were described as alive but in critical condition. That was a cowardly act, the sheriff said. The 2 deputies were doing their job, minding their own business, watching out for the safety of the people on the train. To see somebody just walk up and start shooting on them, it ticks him off. I won't go as far as he said, but obviously, the sheriff was very upset. It dismays me at the same time. There's no pretty way to say it. One deputy was described as a 31-year-old mother of a 6-year-old boy. Her husband came to the hospital after the shooting. So here's a mother, has a 6-year-old son, has a husband, and now she's fighting for her life in the hospital. The other deputy was a 24-year-old man, and his girlfriend and parents came to the hospital. The sheriff said he swore in both deputies to office just 14 months ago in the same class. Officials were not able to get a detailed description of the shooter other than a man. Officials cautioned that the surveillance video released from the scene uses a fisheye lens, so the suspect's height and weight may be slightly distorted from reality. The surveillance video can be viewed here. Obviously, you can't see it because this is an audio podcast. Warning, footage of the shooting may be disturbing to some viewers. If there's some weird reason you want to see it, it's available. I don't even want to watch it. The photograph of the shooting taken from the surveillance lens is the cover. I made that the cover art for this podcast, so you can at least see the still image of the person raising the gun towards the vehicle. The department tweeted moments ago, 2 of our sheriff deputies were shot in Compton and were transported to a local hospital. They are both still fighting for their lives, so please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. All right? That comes to us from the LA County Sheriff's Twitter feed. Deputies blocked off the street in the area and are searching for the suspect. And I have a photograph here of cop cars all over the place, blocking off different streets, obviously trying to find the suspect. The department had at least 14 homicide detectives on scene to investigate, along with forensic specialists, the Special Enforcement Bureau, K-9 units, and other department personnel. President Donald Trump also reacted to the shooting, retweeting the sheriff's department video and commenting, "Animals that must be hit hard." Compton mayor posted a statement on Instagram. "I am devastated to learn of the tragedy that occurred in our city tonight. Both deputies and their families will remain in our prayers." A small crowd, including some apparent demonstrators, gathered near the hospital where the deputies were transported. Witnesses say members in the group were chanting anti-law enforcement slogans. At one point, tried to get inside the hospital. So you have two people shot, and then you have protesters shot. Protesters for what? What? If you're protesting police brutality, go protest the police officers who committed said brutality. If these two police officers, two deputies who have been shot, if they're not involved in the so-called police brutality that you're protesting, then leave them alone. Like, just because one person wears the uniform and does something wrong, you're going to demonstrate and protest and attack anyone who wears a uniform, a police uniform? Like, what logic is that? What are you thinking? That's the same kind of logic. Like, what? One white person committed a crime, then all white people are guilty. One black person committed a crime, all black people are guilty. That's not the way to think. If one individual did something wrong, that one individual needs to be held accountable, and justice should be sought and fought for. But they tried to get into the hospital. What were they going to do if they got into the hospital? What were they going to do? Listen, and then this is from the LA County Sheriff. All right, this is from their Twitter feed. You can look at, I've got the tweet right here in front of us. To the protesters blocking the entrance and exit of the hospital emergency room, yelling, "We hope they die," referring to two LA sheriffs ambushed today in Compton. Do not block emergency entries and exits to the hospital. People's lives are at stake when ambulances can't get through. So they were literally blocking the entrance and exits to the hospital. And then they were yelling, "We hope they die." Now, what are you thinking? So you hear the news, hey, two deputies were shot. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave my home and I'm going to run down to the hospital to protest and to block entrance and exits to the hospital, which could possibly impact people in your own community. Hey, who cares? Let's block it and then let's chant that we hope they die. That is less than human. That is insane. That is evil. That is pure evil, ungodly, and must be condemned. Now, when police do something wrong, the police officers who committed said wrong need to be held accountable. If there's a cover-up occurring in a police, at a police unit, then all the leadership of that police unit need to be held accountable. But if police in Minnesota are guilty of murder and killing someone, well, you don't shoot people in L.A. You don't shoot police officers in L.A. Like that's just, there's no logic in there. Each police, I don't even know if people understand this. There's not like one uniform, like different police agencies, police forces. The police they're controlled, and each one has different. They are controlled differently. They have different rules. They operate differently, and they are controlled by the police force in Minnesota is different than the police force in L.A. It's not one just large, what can we say? One large organization with one leader. They're all different police forces with different police chiefs, different rules, different ways they conduct themselves, different ways in which they operate. It's just absolutely foolish to see all police as just one big organization. No, they're different police forces with different leaders, and they operate in different ways. Yeah, I'm having a hard time even talking this morning because I'm so upset about this. Now, again, I'm just as upset when the police do something wrong. When police brutality, it bothers me as well. And it's frustrating because I have to, if I don't express frustration about the other things that have happened, George Floyd, et cetera, Breonna Taylor, if I don't express frustration about those, and people say, well, you get upset when the police are killed, but you don't get upset when the police kill other people. No, I get upset when wrong happens, and I don't care who commits it. I don't care their color. I don't care the uniform they're wearing or they're not wearing a uniform. When evil happens, when wrong occurs, it needs to be condemned. Yeah, so frustrating. But I opened my Bible while I was standing at the pulpit. Yeah, you can tell I'm trying to speak clearly. I'm trying to speak, and I apologize for stumbling over my words. I'm just very, very bothered by this. I'm very bothered by this. But I just opened my Bible and I looked up three passages of Scripture. Three passages of Scripture. Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31. Ephesians 4:31. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. Be ye kind one to another. Be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. Now, I can't expect the world to pick up the Bible and think that way and act that way. I can't expect them to think and act that way. They're not going to forgive. They're going to seek vengeance. They're not going to turn the other cheek. They're going to attack. And that's what we see here. I mean, there are people who are upset at what the police have done in some states, and so they see all police as the enemy, which is just foolish because not all of the police units, not all the police forces are connected. They're different. They each operate with different leaders, different rules, and different approaches in how they police. And you have to understand that. So that's already a foolish idea. But the world doesn't look at things this way. When something wrong happens, then it's about fighting. It's not about forgiving. It's not about putting away bitterness and wrath. No, they're not going to think this way. But as Christians, we need to ask ourselves, look, we may not go, when we get upset with someone, we may not pull out a gun and put bullets inside a police cruiser. But how do we respond when we're upset with people? How do we respond to people at work? How do we respond to people in our family? How do we respond to each other at church? How do we respond to our neighbors? We need to just use this as a reminder for us to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, do we have any bitterness? Do we have any wrath? Do we have any anger? If so, we need to put it away. We don't want any malice, any bitterness, any wrath, any anger. We need to get rid of that in our lives. And we need to be kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. We need to forgive others as we have been forgiven. The forgiveness we have received is the forgiveness we give. And we have received complete and perfect forgiveness from God, and we need to extend that to others. Colossians chapter 3 says pretty much the exact same thing. Colossians 3:13. Colossians 3:13, forbearing one another and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. We are about forgiving one another. And look, and I understand it's not easy to say forgive if you see someone committing some horrible crime like killing people. Obviously, it's not easy to do that. But we are to offer love, compassion, and forgiveness. This is the biblical approach. And just make sure we understand the LA deputies, the two LA deputies who were shot, they've only been on the police force, 14 months, 12 months, maybe just a year, a little over a year. They're relatively new to the police force. So a lot of the police brutality that's been done over the last few years that people have pointed to, they have nothing to do with it. Obviously, they were not in Minnesota. Obviously, they're not in some of the other locations where we have cases of shootings. These individuals had nothing to do with that. They're not on the same police force. They're not in the same state. But no, for some weird reason, all police now are the enemy. No, the ones who do wrong need to be held accountable. I'm completely in agreement with that. But this is evil. And for protesters to block an entrance and exits to a hospital and say, let them die, it's just crazy. And then, of course, Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, verse 17. Romans chapter 12, verse 17. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing, thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Now, it's easy for me to sit here and read those words. Okay, I'm sitting here in an empty church in the middle of nowhere, Texas. It's far different than on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, something horrible happens to me, my family, someone I care about, and then I'm supposed to respond this way. I'm not saying I would always respond this way because I'm a human being. I have a sinful nature, and I know I would fall short of what the Bible tells us to pursue here. But just because I may fall short, I hope I would never justify my falling short and acknowledge when I do fall short. I don't always respond in the way that the Bible tells me to respond, and neither do you. That's why Jesus had to come, and that's why we have to cling to the cross, because if we look to our own works to save us, we're never going to get there. But this is the biblical morality that we seek. This is the biblical morality we strive for, that we are to love people. We're not to take vengeance. We're to overcome evil with good. If our enemy is hungry or thirsty, we give them food, we give them drink. Even if you see the police as your enemy, this is the way you are to respond biblically. Now, for Christians, we have to pursue this. The world, they've abandoned Christian morality. They've abandoned this approach. Now it's kill. It's an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, kill, fight, burn, riot. It's just craziness that is out there, and we continue to see this. Wrong is done. And so they believe the way to overcome that wrong is with more wrong. The way to overcome that evil is with more evil. The way to stop that killing is to kill some others. The way to stop the police brutality is by exercising brutality against the police. That never works. We all know the famous saying. Some people say it's a cliche, but there is some truth to it. An eye for an eye will just end up making everyone blind. And tooth for a tooth will just end up making everyone, toothless. It doesn't ever stop. It doesn't stop. Violence only produces more violence, which produces more violence. You retaliate. Now, look what's happening. There's police officers right now in L.A. probably on edge. They're probably angry. They're driving all over the place looking for a suspect. And there's probably some there who they want revenge and they want vengeance. Hopefully, it doesn't lead to some horrible tragedy on top of the tragedy that's already occurred. Hopefully, these two deputies are able to pull through and get on and be able to have a full recovery and go on with a normal life and overcome any of the not only the physical trauma, but the mental trauma. Hopefully the person who's responsible for this shooting is caught and justice is done. Hopefully the people who tried to block a hospital and say we hope they die will wake up at some point and realize what they have done and feel guilty about it. Hopefully. But this is a sad state of affairs, And again, I know I did not articulate it clearly, so let me try to say it again. Look, the police force in Los Angeles is different than the police force in Minnesota. Different police forces. They're completely different states. They operate different way of approaching policing, different police chiefs. They're just because both wear a police uniform and they're both police officers don't make them the same. Right? That's just like, look, I live in a community where, an African-American man went into a convenience store and robbed it. All black people are criminals. Now, nobody likes that, but we call that racism. Okay, well, guess what? It's not the same. Just because some police officers do wrong doesn't mean all police officers do wrong. Just because one white person goes in and does a mass shooting, that doesn't make all white people mass shooters. Just because a white person, there's been a lot of white serial killers, doesn't mean all white people are serial killers. Hold each individual responsible for their actions, and their actions do not reflect on everyone else in the same profession or the same race or in the same geographical location or the same hair color or the same eye color. Doesn't work that way. If you got a problem with the police force in Minnesota, leave Los Angeles, go to Minnesota and protest peacefully. Seek change. But my concern is that we're going to, I hope we don't see more of this, but as divided as the country is, it just feels like, again, I've described it like I feel like we're sitting on like 100 pounds, thousands of pounds of bombs, and they're about to explode. And we could talk all day, but there you have it. There's the news report. I wanted to bring it to you. So let's go through this again. 2 LA deputies were sitting in a police car near a train station in Compton, Los Angeles. A suspect walks by the car, then turns towards the car, raises a pistol. It looks like a pistol, fires with it into the car a number of times, strikes both deputies, it sounds like, in the head. Both are now undergoing surgery and are in critical condition, fighting for their lives. How critical, we do not know, but hopefully they both survive. One was a mother, a 6-year-old son. The other one was 24-year-old male. Obviously, they have family members. Obviously, it's a horrible situation. It sounds like as they tried to get these deputies to the hospital, that demonstrators, protesters, tried to block the entrance and exit to the hospital, yelling, "We hope they die." And it sounded like the demonstrators tried to gain entrance inside the hospital, which I don't even know what they were attempting to do at that point. Were they going to try to finish the job? What were they going to do? I do not know. It's a sad state of affairs. But from a biblical perspective, let's use this to not just look at them, but I always try my best to, it's easy to look at the actions of others and condemn the actions of others. It's easy to do that. But sometimes you have to use the actions of others to serve as a mirror that you can look into your own life. And I have to look into my own life and ask myself, hey, do I have any bitterness? Do I have any anger? Do I have any wrath? If I need to put that away. I need to not seek vengeance. I need to trust the Lord. I need to try to give food. If I find my enemy and they're hungry or thirsty, I need to give them food and drink. I need to try to overcome evil with good. I need to make sure that I'm trying to pursue a biblical approach to life. And even though I know I'm going to fall short, it's what I strive to do. All right, I'll stop right there. That's the latest. And hopefully I provided something of value in this. You can email me your thoughts at newsif@yahoo.com. Newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. Thank you for listening.